I am live now. We are starting in 3 minutes. So I'm going to do some breaking the ice comments. I think I'm going to sit because I'm a bit hot and uncomfortable wearing this type of clothes. This is an old shirt that I'm borrowing from a relative. This is a nice red jacket I like that I bought in a secondhand store in a rural area, and it was a good price, and also it gives back to that community, so it's a good choice, and it looks good because it's nice colors, right? It's different from the norm. I'm not wearing a tie. Last time I showed you I know how to make a tie, but it's too related to slavery, which I don't want to support. And it's too bad because I do own many ties that were often bought in secondhand stores that have beautiful colors that I would like to wear, but I have to kind of make some compromises in what I want to role model as a primate on this planet. So we're just going to wait another minute, and I have a written welcome to all. There are no bad questions. There is only genuine curiosity. Now, if somebody asks a question that is mocking, that doesn't really have genuine curiosity, of course, it'll be easy to notice that. But just anybody that wants to ask something specifically about HsD and how it relates to either the past, current affairs, or what is coming in the future, you are welcome. I have a fan going to help cool me down with this warm clothes, and a hat to help my head stay warmer. So it is a struggle. My body is challenged a little bit more than usual in trying to look a little bit more presentable for you. I hope you will appreciate it by asking some questions. Okay, let me begin. My microphone is on. I believe it'll help. So HsD, I originally used that term written in that way because I was calling it Homo sapien domestication. Glenn, a fella I met on the internet one time, mentioned the words Human-Domestication-Syndromes. I liked it a lot, and I used it. And again, there's a variation of the same letters. So thank you, Glenn. That came from you in a discussion about this, which you were curious about some years ago. I promised bilingualism. I kind of forgot. So it's nice that I did receive a few questions by email beforehand that were written in French to remind me. So that's good. Is this thing on? Okay, I'm saying this because I want to know where people are. I know that right now there's a lot happening, let's say, well, in your own lives, but also this does, by the way, relate to your own lives, but also in, downtown Ottawa, in Ukraine, Russia area, but all these things again relate to this and can be explained with this. So unless you are, in distress right now in those areas, I would think you would have prioritized this. So it starts with criticism, but again, reality matters, people, if you would like to create something better for future generations. Où êtes-vous tous? Again, that was there to remind me to speak in French. Ma langue première, c'est le français du Québec, de la région de l'Outaouais. J'ai un baccalauréat de l'Université d'Ottawa, où le bac est enregistré en français. Ça, c'est parce que j'ai choisi ça juste parce que j'avais moins de cours de langue à faire, vu que j'avais déjà des crédits d'un diplôme d'études collégiales de cégep. J'avais juste quelques cours en français à faire, au lieu de m'inscrire en anglais puis faire beaucoup plus de cours de langue en anglais. Donc, il n'aurait pas été difficile pour moi parce que l'anglais, j'ai toujours préféré ça. Quand j'ai vu, par exemple, qu'aller à la bibliothèque de Gatineau, quand j'étais jeune, un moment donné, il n'avait plus de livres d'astronomie ou de sciences qui m'intéressaient. Puis aussi, la musique, ben, il y en avait que j'aimais, mais il y en avait plus que j'aimais en anglais, ou des émissions de télévision encore. Mais ça m'a rendu un petit peu plus avec ma curiosité de vouloir apprendre. Puis j'étais curieux des histoires des amis que j'avais au secondaire, disons, qui avaient de la langue différente, anglophone, et des choses à apprendre d'eux autres. C'est un petit peu la curiosité, mais c'est aussi qu'au Canada, on dit que les deux langues sont officielles. Ça fait pas de tort et de bilingue. Troisième chose, my own triggers. I suffer from species alienation. And for a long time, I said, I suffer from this because the norm suffers from HsD. So I'm going to define HsD, but there's a risk of me having triggers. And of course, I have good days and bad days with that. And there's less and less bad days. There was a bad day a few weeks ago, and I filmed the video therapeutically, and I put it on one of my YouTubes, and I shared it recently on Facebook. This is therapy for me, saying, this is me, this is you. I know what the right thing to do is, but still, when there's many of these triggers in the same day, here's me venting a little bit. But today, my promise to you would be more to have grace and dignity, and to actually have the calm that a professional can demonstrate, even when talking about things that has no choice but to have triggers, because what I'm talking about is something that affects me and other people that I care about, including life on this planet in general. So if I really care about this, of course, if I really care about myself and others and the future, then of course, what's happening right now, it being mostly caused by this theory explaining it, it would have triggers. Even if I ignore the ones that are related to my life, just knowing that, in working with children, with people with mental health, knowing that as I was continuing my journey, I was leaving them in cultures that were going to fail them, I'm never going to run out of tears to cry for this. Even if I don't accumulate new experiences like these, I'll never run out of tears from the ones I've already had. So that's what I want to promise today, is to stay focused and stay disciplined and stay scientifically accurate, and choose my words wisely and stay calm. I decided that this would be part 1 of 3. And the reason for that is there's many other subjects I'd like to talk about every month, but this is really an important one, and things are accelerating related to this, and still nobody wants to talk about this, and nobody wants to really make real attempts to understand it. And of course, the theory itself explains why people don't want to go there and understand it. So, it's kind of a catch-22, and I'm going to explain how it is. By the way, if you send me questions, we are now live, and the questions can come in anytime. Just let me know if you want to be anonymous with your question. All right, so because I decided it's 1 of 3, and I also want to do a different topic every month, this one will continue part 2 and part 3. If my ability to connect to the internet in a quiet place is possible, I will do part 2 next week at the same time, and part 3 the week after, so in 2 weeks at the same time. So that means if you weren't able to send questions or comments now, I prefer questions than comments, but you can kind of blend both as long as there's something to answer. For example, you might understand part of what I'm saying, but you can't kind of rationalize it with other beliefs or other interpretations of what you believe is happening in your lives or in the news, or with our species. Then you can say, I'm starting with this premise. How can I incorporate your theory with this premise? And again, with Professor Dunlap that I've done an interview with, actually the conversation we had before we recorded was actually a lot more informative. And but in the one that we recorded, you can see that he talks about a foundation of beliefs in sociology, where if people start from this and nobody challenges it, it has its limits of how this society can evolve. So again, when people ask me questions and comments, if they write a lot, if they comment a lot, I'll be able to tell what the premise of their beliefs is, and what prevents them from grasping this topic that is really, really, really obvious. Because as soon as you admit this, like if an alcoholic goes to a meeting and they say, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I'm an alcoholic," and they're really saying it with genuine care and concern for themselves and the people there, and with really a true attitude and motivation of getting better, not just for their own lives, but the people they care about that their alcoholism is affecting, then they will make progress. There's a psychological explanations. There's psychological theory that explains they'll make progress, whether it's a religious program at its base or not, whether they are religious or not. There are psychological components that say that they are likely, if they're really investing, they will make progress in these meetings. So again, if some of you are writing comments or questions where, and again, I welcome anything, but if you're not ready to say kind of, "My name is so and so, and I believe I suffer from at least some forms of HSD," then yes, it's a little bit you working against yourself. And I've been to a lot of AA and NA meetings, and in a variety of at least 3 other types of meetings in my study of the human condition. But the Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, they were part of a job I had for 4 years. So I never suffered from these myself. But of course, we're all susceptible to different types of addictions. And, it's part of the flaws of our brains. They're not well balanced. They're very susceptible. We have to constantly do work to maintain them. And when I say this, I don't mean go to work or mow the lawn, although mowing the lawn might have benefits to what's going on up here sometimes, right? A physical activity and a reduction in, the spinning wheel there, and focusing on something simple like smelling the cut grass. So again, HSD, it's kind of hard for people to really grasp it in its entirety, or even part of the schemas in a way that will stick with them, unless they have the attitude of being ready to challenge everything they've thought of before and everything that everybody else is really believing in their societies. So again, my life has been a lot about swimming against the river. And I've said in the past, it's not about a joy of being unorthodox. It is not a pleasant thing, especially at the levels that I am, to be living a life uncommon. It is because at some point, there've been thousands of decisions where I began to compromise less and less what I knew was right and wrong. And at some point, I never looked back. It was, that's my course, and the only way that I would deviate would be brain damage or poison or something, because my brain now is, I'm not giving up on reality. I've suffered so much swimming against the norm, and it provides so many benefits at the level that I am in having a resilient brain and understanding the behaviors of others towards me, towards each other, towards the natural world. And even to the point that it provided me with an ability to not take things personally because they suffer from this illness. I might suffer from species alienation. And at the beginning, I realized that's because the norm suffers from HSD. And then I would have been upset with the norm. But then I realized, hey, I suffer, they suffer. The best I can do is just acknowledge their suffering and try to help them with it, and try to role model that, I got out of it. And I got out of it with no meetings to go to. So this is kind of a meeting. This is kind of somebody saying, this is happening. We know we're being controlled. We kind of don't know who to blame and how to stop it. And a lot of people are rebelling. And what they're rebelling against right now, pretty much everywhere in the world, is such an incomplete and often confused, misinterpreted version of HSD. It's just a tiny, tiny little version of it. And they don't realize that they are as much a victim of themselves as others. because again, it's showing up at that meeting and saying, my name is so and so, and I suffer from HSD. And if there's a sponsor that can help me, I would continue and continue and continue. And I wouldn't see the world get better during my lifetime, but I will have been able to die knowing I wasn't part of the problem. So a paradigm shift. And I'm going to go with, again, simple things like the flat Earth or the spherical Earth. So when the bell curve creating these paradigms of beliefs in majorities of people primates was able to be measured, it was before I knew that HSD would now compromise this bell curve. So right now, it's not like there are people who still, and again, I know people that most of you know the Earth is spherical. I know that. I'm just using this as an example of a paradigm shift. There may have been a time in the past when more people thought it was flat, and some people might even have thought it was just ongoing. It never ends. You don't fall off or anything. And whatever these things were, reality can be proven right or wrong with the scientific method. So eventually, enough of that came, and enough people thought about it, and a lot of people just started realizing, yeah, the Earth must be spherical. I don't understand the science behind it, even though it's not very complex. A lot of people were quite satisfied with changing with this curve. But right now, the bell curve, because of HSD, is no longer possible. So one explanation I can give is there are people now starting to believe again the Earth is flat. There are people that believe all sorts of things, and they're even more confused and incompatible. And people that believe ridiculous things, let's say about the Earth being flat, they also believed at the same time other things that prove them wrong, but they can't pay attention long enough. They can't find the motivation to participate in a conversation about it. So there's many reasons why the bell curve is no longer, it's possible for other smarter life forms, like maybe chimpanzees. You could see over time, you could measure a bell curve for them having a paradigm shift, and it could be sometimes in smaller cultures. But for us, it's not actually a science we can apply anymore. So that means this is one of the signs that I know that we can't stop what's coming now. There's a question later that's going to be about hope for the future. I'll get to that soon. So HSD, like, can only be cured with thinking. So thinking is not an art form that the majority of people on this planet, even those we believe are our best thinkers, are good at. So it is not something that we should take for granted that other people can teach us, and you just got to enter the right school program or listen to the right videos. It's really not who we are as a species. People that are good at thinking, we're just not. That's a premise you must start with and change this in your head. And I'm going to talk about Jordan Peterson. I'm going to create a what if scenario. Okay, so what if Jordan Peterson contacts me and we agree to create a few videos where we discuss only HSD. Now, at some point, there are some things that are going to make sense to him, and there are things that are not going to make sense to him, or there are things that it will, but then it kind of doesn't work well with other things he's been saying that he would like to stay consistent about. And there'll be some struggles, right? But the thing is I could still make progress with somebody like Jordan Peterson. And the same reason that I would make progress with them is the same reason that I made progress with myself, with understanding HSD and fighting it off. It's not as much about intelligence, people, or thinking. It's more about attitude. Attitude is related to thinking. But I know that Jordan Peterson is higher than average honesty level, and that's a very big part of his ethics and values. And I also know that as a psychologist that has helped others, he understands the power of attitude, right? With the right attitude, even the most uncomfortable triggers can be worked through, where eventually the schemas would be formed, where Jordan Peterson would eventually be able to get everything together and see how maybe some of the things he's been saying before, although with good intentions, did not fit even some other things that he was saying, but certainly not the big picture. Now, Jordan Peterson explains things just a little bit ahead of most people. And that's a lot how people have followers sometimes, is they're at a stage of what they're saying that their followers are ready to go at least there. They have the comfort zone, the attitude to go a little bit more in their awareness. But again, it's so incomplete and it's so not all inclusive and sometimes inaccurate compared to HSD. So it'd be great. It'd be great if I had somebody like Jordan Peterson to collaborate with. And by the way, I'm finished my study of him and his psychological profile. I might move on to somebody different. There's two choices. One of them might be Sam Harris next, and I'd be making videos. Now, anything I say about Jordan Peterson, I prefer Jordan Peterson challenge me about it if he believes I'm wrong or if he'd like to participate in a conversation about it. And it never has to be confrontational. It never has to be. But again, I'm very good at pushing against bullies, right? And I'm not saying that he is, but if it becomes confrontational, it would be that I'd be patient with him if we make an agreement in these conversations, but also that if it becomes that I see, he's defending an armor that's really weak, right? It's an armor. Most people have armors. I see them as made of tissue, right? Facial tissue of Kleenex. And mine is strong because it's reality related. And it makes people think of me as ego-driven or narcissistic or arrogant, when really it's reality related. And a lot of this proof is in why am I so transparent? Why do I put myself out there that I'm ready to be challenged and role model, debate, philosophical discourse, using reason. Dangers of HSD among educators, mental health workers, older elites. And when I say older elites, I might be talking about the rich. I might be talking about people that influence politics, that are in politics. A lot of things related to that, right? In the militaries, things like that. So, of course, HSD, if it's not acknowledged as a cultural illness and an evolutionary dead end for our species that now can have increasingly negative and totally deadly impacts on the biosphere on our planet, then it's pretty risky that in the education, mental health, or older elites, the ones that still have power, that even kind of push the youth down, the ones that have the creative answers and the resiliency that are pushing them down, that's who I would like to actually have, the hope. I would see hope if I see more educators, because again, I've traveled the world. I've worked in education in a few different provinces and a few different countries. I've studied this, and I haven't really noticed a school. I've only noticed domestication centers. With mental health workers, here's a phenomenon that I believe will become more common, is when a mental health worker does not acknowledge HSD as a phenomenon and does not at the same time also try to cure themselves of it, is they will eventually reach with somebody that's really motivated to kind of get the answers and not just realize something's wrong with them, but other people, and address this with a mental health worker. I predict that more and more the mental health workers will get frustrated as they survive one day at a time, because their choices aren't great for their own health, and they need help as much as their patients. Is they will say, "Hey, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy?" And this is it's a form of cruelty. It's a form of, well, they should be disbarred, because it's actually that if reality can be proven and it's simple and it's just a change of paradigm, and then suddenly realize it all fits in there, it all fits. But the fact that they claim that happiness will be to go deeper into what this patient is there for, saying, I want to push back against things I disagree with that we're seeing everywhere. It's everywhere. I've started by disconnecting from phones, connecting with nature more, going to philosophers' cafes, reading different things, eliminating certain things from my diet, that have a negative impact on my brain, you know, it could be caffeine, alcohol, whatever, is somebody's genuinely trying to realize thinking can be better. And I know it's not just me, it's others. If they go see a professional says, do you want to be right when it's easy to prove this right, or happy, which is their intellectual laziness, as they also suffer from HSD, the mental health workers, it is an evolutionary dead end. So again, if you, and I don't want to discourage people from seeing mental health workers, but one way to know if you're starting to want to address HSD is have them maybe look at this video or some others that I speak, and what do you think about this before I choose you and I accept you. And if they don't give you that choice, if they say, no, you will get the help that we know is good for you, then again, HSD is strong there and you can't be cured there. So it'd be more like meeting people that want to talk about this. I've offered to actually do support groups for people that work in mental health or education. And a lot of it has to be bring the light to this, which is causing every other form of mental illness to get worse. I believe there might be a question. So what I can do is do that right now, although we are going to get to some other questions after. Okay, let me see here. I'll get my mouse. And I'm fairly new at this, folks, doing these live sessions. Ça va me rappeler de venir en français. C'est une question en français ou deux questions qui se recoupent un peu. Pour un néophyte du sujet, pouvez-vous expliquer un ou deux événements marquants de l'histoire qui ont mené à la domestication humaine? Je pense que c'est ça qu'a dit la personne, parce que c'est DH. À quel moment est-elle apparue? OK. Là, je vais juste vous démontrer quelque chose parce que I claim to be a lifelong learner. Okay? Là, according to the meaning of context, I believe that néophyte means comme un débutant ou quelqu'un qui est nouveau au sujet ou qui ne connaît pas le sujet. Okay? So what I'm going to do is open another window and go look it up and see if I'm right. So this is me again, role modeling that I don't have all the answers and that I want to be certain about what I say. A person who is new to a subject, skill, or belief. Si quelqu'un m'aurait juste dit le mot néophyte, j'aurais pas été certain. I was using the meaning of context du restant de la question. OK? Fait que c'est ça. Ça, c'est un petit peu une question, j'aurais répondu un petit peu plus tard, mais c'est fantastique comme question parce que moi, je pense qu'il n'y a pas personne qui m'a vraiment demandé ça ou qui est curieux, mais je vais vous dire que ça fait plusieurs milliers d'années qu'une ou plusieurs versions de qu'est-ce qu'on peut voir comme des syndromes de domestication humaine, puis comment ça a affecté notre cerveau d'une façon négative, qui l'a rendu moins productif comme cerveau qui était déjà nouveau. Là, on est une espèce très nouvelle. Nos neurotransmitters, puis les cultures dont on participe, n'ont pas trouvé une stabilité là, comme nouvelle espèce. Puis c'est certain qu'on n'a pas concentré sur ça. On a concentré sur d'autres choses. Puis c'est pour ça que je dis qu'on n'a pas vraiment... On ne s'est même pas rendu au stage d'adolescent encore comme espèce. Là. Ça fait des milliers d'années. Puis des exemples de ça, ben, tu sais, comme... présentement, encore, un des signes que je sais qu'on est fait là, comme espèce, c'est encore les religions ils vont augmenter plus. Puis ça fait des années que je parle de ça, qu'ils vont être aussi que les gens vont des fois être à la même église. Puis ils ne croiront pas exactement les mêmes choses, mais ils ne voudront pas non plus participer aux conversations pour montrer comment ils interprètent leur propre, disons, un livre, la Bible, disons, de la même façon. Ça va juste faire partie d'une tribu qui ont besoin de faire partie, puis besoin de penser peut-être que c'est la plus grosse tribu au monde ou dans leur ville. Puis cette tribu-là, elle lui donne un sens de sécurité parce qu'on n'a pas développé une confiance en notre sens de sécurité comme espèce, même si c'est nous autres l'espèce la plus dangereuse sur la planète là, qui peut la détruire bien des fois. Donc ça, c'est une partie de notre manque de maturité déjà. Ben, la religion, puis les sortes de religions, puis n'importe quoi qui nous disconnecte de la réalité, là, ça fait des milliers d'années. S'il y avait des temps dans notre histoire où, disons, fallait avoir une sorte d'explication des éclairs parce qu'on paniquait tout le temps à cause des éclairs, puis on a peut-être même vu une personne mourir d'un éclair, puis cette personne-là, on en a parlé pendant des générations, ben, c'est certain que même si dans ce temps-là, il n'y aurait pas une explication scientifique du phénomène des éclairs, puis comment c'est rare de se faire frapper par un éclair, ben, si l'explication n'était pas correcte, mais nous donnait un sens de peur plus basse, puis comme elle devrait l'être, parce que c'est rare de se faire frapper par des éclairs. Mais si on va dire que ça a continué, là, cette explication-là des éclairs qui n'était pas correcte, même dans un temps où que la modernité accélérait, puis on pensait encore des choses incorrectes qui ne sont pas si dures que ça, aller chercher les réponses, mais on n'a pas voulu, ben, tu sais, c'est des exemples. Ça veut dire qu'on peut aller très loin dans le passé, là, pour démontrer des choses pas correctes avec notre cerveau encore aujourd'hui. Puis des religions qui encouragent, tu sais, des comportements de moutons à une espèce qui n'est pas un mouton, c'est dangereux, puis c'est dangereux encore aujourd'hui. Je comprends pourquoi que les gens allent là, puis je comprends pourquoi qu'ils vont y aller plus dans ça, as the world will continue to crumble around us. Mais c'est la mauvaise solution. Puis, dans ce temps-là, là, si on va dans le passé où s'il y avait, disons, un petit village là, qui ont habité à la même place pendant, disons, 600 ans, puis, disons, dans le premier centaine, quelqu'un s'est fait frapper par un éclair, puis là, pendant tout ce temps-là, ils ont eu peur ou c'était comme des explications là, vraiment folles. Ou si cette culture-là aurait eu des gens plus sages, wiser, comme elders, qui auraient dit, ben non, c'est rare, là, nous autres, on ne se souvient pas de ça. Puis il ne faut pas paniquer, même si c'est arrivé en même temps qu'un autre événement, on n'a pas besoin de faire un incorrect cause and effect. Là. Ben, c'est ça, là, quand il n'y a pas des challenges, des choses qui ne font pas du bon sens, surtout quand on peut aller chercher des réponses puis pas sauter dans la paresse intellectuelle puis des peurs qui ne sont pas logiques, puis qui font du tort au futur pour nos enfants, nos petits-enfants, ben ça continue. Ben, imaginez que ça a continué tellement longtemps avec tellement de choses, puis le système monétaire, ça a amplifié ça aussi, que là, c'est rendu que ouais, c'est plus bien possible. Moi, je suis né à un temps où on avait passé les tipping points au niveau social, puis notre habilité de servir de notre cerveau pour régler nos propres problèmes. C'est un petit peu pourquoi j'ai dit que je ne crois plus dans le domaine, dans le concept de humanism, parce qu'on n'est plus capable de régler nos propres problèmes. Fait que, merci pour la question. Je pense que j'ai pas mal tout répondu, mais vous pouvez toujours faire des suivis parce que je fais partie 2 et 3, où ce que je vais pouvoir compléter un petit peu plus la réponse des questions que vous avez posées. So I'll get back to English now, and just to remind you, when I switch, I won't switch for 20 minutes or something. So please stay with me. Please attempt to get the meaning out of context, because even if it's a language that you don't know any words about, if I point at something, if I say an English word in there somewhere, if you read my nonverbal, then you are fighting against intellectual laziness, and you will, feed the curiosity instead. Moi, là, je ne suis pas devenu meilleur que la norme en anglais parce que j'ai eu des bons professeurs d'anglais à la commission scolaire des draveurs. Là. On va vous dire ça tout de suite. C'est pas pour ça que je suis devenu meilleur en anglais que la norme. Okay? Pensez-y, le pouvoir de compréhension, là, c'est pas mal nous autres qui l'avons. All right, so 2 interesting patterns. There are more than that, but here's the 2 that I had decided that I would be talking about today. There are people, including people that might be asking me questions today, that show genuine interest in wanting to learn more about this and how it has an impact on their lives and how, let's say, they interact with their kids in society and how they are lending their voice or swimming in the river for the future in a way that is either good or bad. So one thing is that the people that I've interacted with so far that have had some, that either were getting paid or not to actually listen a little bit more when I'm talking about this, is I found that they got worse. Their HSD got worse. I found majoritively this is what's happening. In fact, it might be everybody. And it could mean that, I haven't structured, let's say a 12-step program or something like that to help them. And in a way that's true, but it's also the fact that they would be swimming against the river of everybody except when they interact with me. And that is often what causes them to get deeper into the HSD. So, okay, so here's a way. Let's say somebody catches an STD that is AIDS, and let's say they then hang out with people they identify with that have also caught STDs, different ones, and they also get close to them and sleep with them. Well, of course, they're going to not only catch other STDs, but they're actually going to compromise their health even more. So again, but people identify, right? They identify with them that suffer through the same thing and that have gone through the same thing. And they just love somebody. It's just they were dishonest with them, or they weren't mature enough or responsible enough to get tested or to wear the right kind of protection or to stop when something was exciting, but it should have stopped. All these things. Then they would ask, why couldn't I count on my own mind to keep me safe and to not waste or compromise the only one mortal life that I have? And again, it's the same thing, right? It's if they try to attempt to get out of HSD is, and I'm not talking about a cult here, but try to find others. And again, I'll take it on as the creator of this Grand-Unification theory that actually explains everything. So I could call it a theory that people might disagree with, but I just call it what explains everything that I observed before and during my lifetime and what's coming after. It's pretty clear. For me, it's pretty clear, but I just had to accept it and keep myself clear of it, right? Fight it off. So people, you'd have to actually commit to fight it off. So it's actually do work, and it's not taking a pill against HSD. There'll never be a pill against HSD because HSD is up here. It's doing our own personal development, even if it means losing all of our friends and families until hopefully we find somebody that discusses reality in the same way that you do, that is scientifically measurable. And again, with a species that is that far gone here, you have to be prepared that you might be the only one doing your healing, and that I might not always be there, but that I would offer to be and offer to help train others to be there for others. That's the best I can offer right now. But the thing is who do you want to be? Do you want to be born with this DNA, but live the life of a sheep and train your kids in this way because it's the path of least resistance? Although deep down, you know that only bad things are coming during your lifetime and certainly your kids. It's up to you who you want to be. If I don't act like a typical sheep, then I am treated mistakenly as a more accessible victim. So this has happened many times in my life. It happened recently again with a school district I've already mentioned. Is from the beginning, I make it very clear that I put children first, that quality education without compromise, and that I am not like the norm. I'm a learning specialist, a profession we don't have in Canada. And I defined it very specifically. It sounds arrogant, but again, I guarantee this. That's the title of my definition, that this is who I am. And you can videotape me and measure this and challenge me anytime you want. but not as a disruption, but as a participant, right? Because you need to prove it by trying it, right? Trying to move away from domestication and into, what is real education. So when in education or other fields, but especially education, or if I try to get jobs in mental health, which I've given up on, because the last time I went to an interview is they really liked me, Island Health, Viha, but they said, okay, next interview, you just have to say these things. So again, for me, this is like, oh my God, they're trying to domesticate me to be failures in mental health like they are so they can feel better about themselves. So again, could I change things from the inside? No, I couldn't. That's a form of mental illness, believing this when the evidence is that we've already passed that stage in everything, including politics. So when I prove that I'm not a sheep and that, I have the cure to not be turned into a sheep that is very, very strong within me, is people see me as so different than them, it somehow makes them believe that I'm more sheep instead of less sheep. That's an interesting phenomenon. It always surprises me. I prove to them, it's there, the proof in our interactions, emails, and yet they believe that I'm more susceptible to be victimized within the realms of HSD when I've proven the opposite. So again, they get them, it escalates, and it's like, exactly, I can predict everything that's going to happen. And yet they can't stop themselves from thinking that I'm more vulnerable in this way instead of less, even though the proof, even before our first interactions, is I'm like this. I claim to be like this. I'm not like this, and I'd like to publicly demonstrate. And when I add this evidence, it blows my mind how strong HSD is, including in education. It's pretty scary. Okay, let's get back to another question in French. So, by the way, this person had 3 questions. The first one was related to just talking generally about the theory. And the second one is this, and then there's a third one. And I'll explain why I only wrote this so far, because they were longer questions. This is in French. I'll get back to English after. Selon vous, HSD projette une vision optimiste ou bien tragique? Now, just the fact that anybody would ask this question, and anybody would, even Jordan Peterson would, I believe. He would say eventually, well, if you want to reach more people, you have to make things feel good, right? Most people say this. But when you do this, you disconnect from reality, because we're long past that. So for me, it'd be doing a disservice to somebody that I'm trying to be a helper for. So the truth is that there's some bad things coming in a lot of different ways, and I don't need to do a presentation about all the bad things that are coming, because that would be, what's the purpose in that? We can do stages, but the thing is we're not just around the corner to a better world or a higher level of awareness. And the way people describe this, it's more like a disconnection from reality and just feeling good without the evidence that this is what reality deserves, feeling good, right? So, unfortunately, c'est des mauvaises choses qui s'en viennent, surtout dans le futur. Pour trouver l'optimisme, c'est vraiment le pouvoir de nos propres choix, parce que, tu sais, si on décrit qu'on veut se sentir bien de la réalité ou du futur, ben, c'est vraiment se sentir bien de nos actions puis de nos choix, nous autres. Ça veut dire que si les gens veulent changer tout le monde, puis vraiment mettre de la pression là-dessus, des efforts là-dessus, ben, ils vont se faire du mal, puis ça ne l'aidera pas. Fait que moi, c'est ça, je vous ai promis pas avoir de confrontation aujourd'hui, puis de vous donner comme des vérités, puis de vous montrer que I can cope with it, puis je m'y ai rendu là tout seul, puis s'il y en a qui m'approchent, ben, vous ne seriez pas tout seul, fait que vous avez déjà un avantage, c'est l'optimisme. Mais vraiment, si on veut se sentir bien pour le futur, on peut juste se sentir bien de nos choix. Puis nos choix, malheureusement, c'est bien plus de travail que vous réalisez pour aller nager contre le courant de la rivière, mais c'est vraiment là, ça ne sera pas facile, là. Mais c'est vraiment là que vous allez éventuellement commencer à vous sentir tellement bien de vos choix que l'optimisme vient de là. Mais ce ne sera pas le premier choix, là. Ça va être difficile. Moi, je suis allé à une conférence à Kamloops, en Colombie-Britannique, qui s'appelait Imagine No Religion For. Il y avait au moins 2 invités, je ne sais pas si c'était prêtre ou pasteur, qui ont devenu plus religieux. Okay? Puis ça, c'était des personnes qui ont donné à leur communauté. Puis le shunning, puis le harassment, puis le persecution qu'ils ont reçu en étaient encore des bonnes personnes qui voulaient aider, mais qui ont commencé à croire des choses différentes, qui faisaient plus de sens pour eux autres. Là. C'est incroyable. La poison, là, elle vient encore plus des gens religieux, là, parce que les autres, c'est les plus vulnérables, c'est ceux qui, disons, qui feraient le moins d'efforts à accepter la responsabilité d'un être qui fait des choix, de la maturité, puis va combattre ça avec une cruauté là, à des gens qui les ont toujours aidés. Puis moi, j'ai des gens de ma famille et des amis de longue durée qui ont été comme ça avec moi. Puis moi, je n'étais pas une personne religieuse avant, là. J'étais religieux au début, quand j'étais jeune, juste à partir de la culture, mais c'était vraiment au début de la vingtaine ou même fin de l'adolescence que, éventuellement, ça faisait pas de sens là, pour moi. OK. Prochaine question de cette personne-là, peut-être après, je vais faire un petit peu d'anglais. What makes you all discard my messages of the obvious? Ça, c'est comme une question que je vous demanderai à vous autres parce que, ou à Jordan Peterson. On va dire que je prends le temps, peut-être la prochaine session, ça va être ça, de créer un diagramme, un petit peu, là, où tout peut remonter à ça comme explication. Puis, it's really obvious. Puis, des fois, les gens vont dire, ouais, je suis d'accord avec toi, mais, puis là, tout d'un coup, là, il y a comme vraiment un switch, là, retombe dans le manque de réalité, là, parce qu'ils ont comme compris la logique en arrière de qu'est-ce qu'ils observaient comme réalité. Puis ça retombe. Ça disconnecte de la réalité parce que c'est plus facile. Tu sais, il y a vraiment quelque chose qui se passe de pas correct là. Ben, ça, c'est quelque chose que vous devriez vous demander. So, why something that is so obvious that we domesticate each other, and we've done it for so long, and we do it with so much force that it should be obvious that this is what even some people rebelling is they're rebelling against this, except that they're rebelling for the wrong things in the wrong way with the wrong people, and they're really part of the problem the way they're doing it, because they're not rebelling against the entire disease, the cultural disease of HSD. They're just rebelling against a tiny little portion of somebody that enforces something on them where they also suffer from HSD, but they're trying to find a balance that is what a good public servant would do as more and more of the world is watching itself and applying the scientific paradigms at the same time as the disconnected economic, religious, and political paradigms that don't really relate to the entire system in a way that is good. So again, it all fits there if you want to see it. The obvious really comes back to HSD. The obvious of what explains everything and even explains how people can't handle to move away from HSD because it means almost your brain tilting like a pinball machine because it's working too hard to actually reconnect with reality. And it's not easy. I tell you, it's not easy. And there's no pill that's going to make it instantaneous with no pain. Defining concept and schemas properly and agreeing on language usage. That is something I want to do next time. Next time, I will bring concepts like cognitive dissonance, even sustainability, even democracy, freedom, and I'll define it in ways. And we have to agree to definitions. And then when one of us wanting to use that term deviates from this, we have to, again, this is intellectual laziness. This is me being triggered in some way. This is HSD controlling my brain, because if we want to use language better than dolphins or other species do, then, we might want to agree with the one language that we use together and the terms and what they mean, and not pick and choose or redefine and think somebody's wrong when you are the one that agreed to use that definition and now you're deviating from it. So we have to use language efficiently, and next time I will be defining some terms and I'll call people on it who aren't using it properly. Okay, let's go back to French. Être humain, un être humain est le seul qui possède les facultés, puis la personne dit intelligence, volonté, liberté. Ben ça, là, c'est un petit peu comme j'ai parlé au début avec Professor Dunlap, qui est spécialiste en sociologie, c'est human chauvinism has been there in big part because of religions, making us more special than we really are, believing this. And we actually believe we are the only species qui a de l'intelligence, de la volonté ou la liberté de ses choix. Tu sais. Puis ça, c'est tellement pas vrai, mais je comprends pourquoi que les gens pensent ça, parce que c'est juste ça qu'on a entendu toute notre vie par domestication, même si les preuves du monde naturel, de qu'est-ce que les autres espèces sont capables ou pas capables de faire, elle est là. Mais quand on étudie, disons, l'intelligence de d'autres espèces, là, malheureusement, quand on pense qu'on est en haut ici, puis qu'on pense déjà que les autres espèces sont en bas là, ben notre science, là, notre démarche scientifique en les étudiant, là, ça ne sera pas exact du tout. Fait qu'il faut commencer à nous séparer de ça. Puis c'est certain que les preuves sont là qu'on n'est pas aussi intelligent qu'on le pense. Puis même les personnes qui peuvent prouver être les plus intelligents de certaines choses, c'est juste certaines choses. Il y a d'autres façons là, qui ne devraient même pas avoir un permis de conduire chez ces gens-là, par exemple. Il faut définir les choses comme il faut. Puis ces termes-là, ben, je ne sais pas si j'ai encore ça, moi. Non, c'est sur un autre, malheureusement, un courriel. Mais la personne avait comme une question qui était 3.1, puis 3.1, je vais aller chercher tantôt, là, ou je vais le marquer après, puis je vais le ramener pour la prochaine fois. Okay? La partie 2, je vais lire 3.1 de la personne en français, puis dans cette question-là, elle répond un petit peu de ces questions, okay? Puis je vais en parler la prochaine fois. OK, coming back to English. Êtes-vous prêt à admettre that some of the worst crimes in history, puis là, vous pourriez dire genocide, des choses faites aux enfants, des crimes contre d'autres qui n'ont pas rien fait de pas correct, mais sont juste différents de nous autres, ou ils croient des choses différentes de nous autres, où on se fait convaincre que c'est nos ennemis quand ils ne sont pas vraiment nos ennemis, sont dans le même dilemme que nous autres. Bien, toutes ces choses-là là, qui ont fait des crimes affreux dans l'histoire, on peut aller des milliers d'années dans le passé, ou on peut aller aux 2 dernières guerres mondiales, ou qu'est-ce qu'on sait ou qu'on ne sait pas, qu'est-ce qui est vraiment dans nos livres d'histoire, là, puis on pense que c'est dans le passé, bien, ces choses-là se passent encore aujourd'hui. And they are actually available, that information, but people choose not to access that information, because if they did, they would have to admit we're no smarter than when we wore, other species' skin as clothes. We're really no smarter. We're not more sentient, and we're not more sapient. Puis malheureusement, HsD, si vous pouvez vraiment accepter ça, là, puis vous évaluer comme espèce plus objectivement, on est vraiment pire à certains niveaux de ces crimes-là que vous dites qui sont les pires de l'histoire, mais sont juste dans le passé quand ils sont encore aujourd'hui. Il y a des façons de comprendre qu'on est pire qu'avant. Parce qu'on a accès à des outils de régler ces choses-là ici, puis on ne le fait pas. On a accès à aller découvrir ces choses-là, arrêter les méchants plus qu'avant, puis on ne le fait pas. Fait que c'est une façon de voir que we are worse than before. HsD has accelerated in the last 60 years or so to make us a lot worse than we are. Puis quand on est devenu pire, ben, notre denial about ourselves has become worse. I've posted some of this already where I contact the president of anthropological associations in the United States or the head of departments at universities, and their responses about primates or us are so disconnected from their field of specialty and who we really are, it's weird. For me, it's like we're gone as a species. When people shun me, or not as much, when does this happen? Well, let's say people think, whether it's true or not, that I'm going to fill a role in a job they hire me for in the way that for them is the right way to do it, when it's just the norm. It's not necessarily the right way to do it. But they, let's say I want to try it out or do research, or I need a little bit of income, and I'll see how long it lasts without me doing anything wrong, except being me. And also, not accepting abuse. Like if somebody's training me and they're wrong about something, and they won't let me say, well, you just, this was a Quebec guy on Vancouver Island, from Quebec, okay? And he made a mistake with which fries he was taking from when I started the cooking of the different meters of the different oil pans for the fries. And all I was trying to do was trying to say, oh no, that's the one. And he so dominated the conversation, thinking I wasn't trainable. He never actually, and by the way, I believe if he would have let me say what I want to say, oh no, that's actually the one that is ready now. If he would have allowed me this, I believe that I would have worked there maybe another day or two. But it didn't even last an hour or two when he needs me. And his spouse, that is, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. I mean, it's a painful thing to go through, but the ridiculousness of the people primates suffering from HsD, it's you gotta laugh about it, except that it's sad. It's really sad. So he didn't give me a chance. And again, and he kept talking and talking. And other people there, like there's one girl whose intelligence, he insulted a young lady. And later on, I went there and I said, oh, I wanted to say that, and I don't think she cared that her intelligence was insulted, although she's a lot smarter than he is, and he's in his maybe 50s, late 50s, and she's, I don't know, maybe early 20s. But she will continue to accept this abuse and work with this guy with various pathologies and neuroses, or whatever you want to call them. And because, I don't know, maybe she'll be made a manager, or maybe, the paycheck is something she believes she needs. She needs this paycheck, so she'll take this abuse. And people can't get out of these patterns. And they really think I'm the bad guy for lasting there an hour or two by standing my ground and just wanting to say, oh, no. And so you guys are nuts, okay? And that's all there is. So the times that I'm not shunned as much or violated my human rights as much, because it's everywhere in Canada and every country of the world, my human rights are violated with just me being me, okay? So when I get it less is when people believe I'm a little bit like them, okay? And if I want to last another day on a job, is I'll just, I can't lie about stuff, but I have to kind of move away from a scenario that I see is developing where I might have to disagree with them, and I'll just move away from it. And that's really when it is. So it's me kind of helping you not violate me so much. But the rest of the time, if I'm being me 100% and being the voice of the forests, the oceans, the whales, your own children, is I will be violated by you big time. Okay, so that's pretty sad. So when am I getting less shunned? So if a mental health representative would say, tu veux-tu avoir raison ou tu veux être heureux? Ben, c'est comme être heureux, là, moi, je suis tellement connecté à la réalité que je peux juste être heureux dans la réalité. Là, je peux pas être heureux en disconnectant de la réalité. Puis demander ça à quelqu'un, ben, c'est un abuseur de HsD. The meaning of the change in lyrics and what this says about HsD and myself. J'aimerais ça qu'il y ait pause à live, mais je pense qu'on n'a pas de pause. OK, ben la chanson, là, c'est une chanson de Roger Miller, mais ça a été écrit par, Daniel Linden, je ne sais plus. On va regarder, c'était une des invitations. Puis c'est Where have all the average people gone? Okay, j'ai changé les paroles parce que j'avais un tutor à un moment donné, puis il me supportait en partie pendant ma maîtrise en anglais, au niveau que moi je voulais concentrer sur le vrai concept de sustainability. Okay, so and it has to be ecocentric, and it has to incorporate the future and the entire systems, right? Not just the people primates, not just the immediate here and now of those pursuing elitism, and also not related to things that are disconnected from the natural world, such as economics. So eventually I decided, hey, and I said, well, one of the things that made me decide is what you and your wife said. And they're very educated and smart and successful people who reinvented their careers a few times, right? And been self-employed. And they said, some people, some employers will hire people without degrees because they create their own projects, or they've demonstrated that they can be independent in some way or another without associating, let's say, with the elitism of universities, or working for an employer that is big or something like that. That was part of it, but mostly I had to be myself, right? I couldn't keep agreeing and paying student loans with things that were wrong being imposed on me. So this tutor helped, review the letter where I fired my faculty, and he used to work for that university before he became an independent educator. And he also had a father that was one of the first in British Columbia to start unions, and I learned about unions from him, and I do believe in that concept. But I also did research about that after, where I became a representative of unions myself, and noticed how corrupted it was with HsD, that it was useless, right? It was better to just deal with the employer directly. It's easier if you've already got skill sets to communicate, negotiate, and document the attempts to make agreements to not have your human rights violated. But he told me at one point, he said, Martin, he said, you got to realize when you talk to people or interact with people is you're very smart. And I have to stop him right away, because what HsD says is not that I'm smart or a genius. What HsD says is that I've barely by myself started to achieve human standard level operating system intelligence of a variety of different things, right? A variety of different intelligence that are stable and running most of the time, that it does not easily get compromised with triggers or things like the pursuit of money, or the pursuit of not wanting to be alone as a social creature, or things like that. So he was right that I'm very far from the norm, but I wanted to say to him, oh, please be careful saying this, because you're going against my theory and what I believe. And I said, thank you, because intelligence is one of the big values that I've always held in my life, in big part because of my grandfather. I said, but don't send the wrong meaning. Is I'm not saying that I'm much smarter than other humans. Is I'm saying that I've finally on my own started achieving average intelligence for what a human should have, but that everybody else has, minds in distress that have compromised their ability to use their brain's higher functions. So I wanted to say that there's a big difference. I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm saying I had to work hard, and to some people it looks like that, when I'm just trying to bring people a little bit closer to what human standard intelligence would be like. And again, I've been saying for multiple years that we should be cataloging not just IQ, but also EQ and other forms of intelligence every year, really every year in children. And we should be, that would help us realize something's wrong, right? Intelligence of all sorts of different types are going down. And it would help us kind of realize we have to totally break down and reinvent the concept of education and the concept of mental health workers. And point the elites who maybe might have good intentions, but are actually going to cause long-term species and cultural damage, right? That's what I'm talking about. So if you listen to the lyrics of this song, I'm saying, where have all the average humans gone? So it means that I wish I could find that elusive Homo sapien. But if we are honest with using the definition of sentience and sapience, and using the scientific method objectively and honestly, is really, I have not found one. That's what the lyric change really is. The logic behind free will and waiting on false saviors. I'm going to save that for next time, okay, I'll talk more about it next time. What I want to say about it now, because we're over an hour now, is false saviors are everywhere. In fact, if you don't see yourself as your own savior, you're following a false savior. And I'm not saying you can't learn things from people, but if you want to boost them or follow them too much or have everybody follow them, instead of you just taking some wisdom you got from them, explaining it in your own words, and then applying it so that the role modeling can catch others, but to actually build up others and say, if that person could only be in charge of this country or whatever, or this or that, it's an evolutionary dead end. Please don't fall into this. Maturing as a species is to realize the responsibility that we have for our own actions. Free will is really, will determine if we were part of the problem or the solution. And it does not matter, what other people do. It only matters what we can control, what we can do. And that's going to not just create how we feel about our lives, because it's our choices and what we put into the world, but it's also going to be what changes the world, is when there is a change of the number of people, primates, that seek to become human, really human, as defined by sentience and sapience, which means you must be able to reference the outside world. It's not just about how your life is impacted by these words, but it's about the entire system that I've been trying to teach you about, that we live in, and that should be the limit of what we should incorporate in our worldviews, is the limit of the biosphere, this globe. Don't even go outside to the solar system and how you might have an impact there. Don't need to go there at all. Just what kind of impact are we having on the living globe that we are part of? And then work on that in your actions, in your lives. And you can talk about it, and you can talk about but don't try to have an impact on somebody else. It's really their job to do the same, to mature into an adult, hopefully resembling Homo sapien human before the end of your life. Next time, I want to talk about how to manifest real hope. And again, it has to do with the concept of accountability. And accountability is about us. Yes, others have their own issues with accountability, but again, it's about us. For example, I can't force somebody to do the right thing with me. I can say, this is what the right thing is. This is what a role model. This is how I'll push back your victimization, and this is the consequences. And if I see that I live in a society where I can't trust the legal system, I'm not going to burn myself out. But at least I stated, you are wrong. I disagree. Here's why. Here's the greater concept of why, and here's how I'll role model it. And again, don't go too much into enforcing things on others that you have not mastered yourself. It's all about just mastering accountability and human thinking tools and sentience and sapience in our role modeling ourselves. That's where the real hope is. I'll get more to it next time. I'm over an hour, and I did have questions, but I wanted to talk about some YouTube videos and make the link of some people, let's say, that are frustrated with the protesters or the people that are occupying Ottawa and how it's going, because they really believe things are wrong with other people that are not supporting them, as if other people are against freedom or against what they're doing. And it really shows a lot of the flaws of HsD. So I know I'm not going to run out of examples, so I could always do that next time as well. I wanted to talk about these books. So I mentioned this one last time. If you haven't read this yet, and again, it's short, and here's where I am so far, and I haven't read anything I disagree with, is if you haven't read this, starting not with wanting to argue it, but accept it as reality, that's a good start. And this person is fairly light in how he writes this, I would say. I don't think he's really that scary to read, but it is scary. It's reality in this. So far, I haven't had anything I disagree with. I'm showing this, and I do want to read Marvel stuff because they have a lot of power in how they influence culture, and they've been very irresponsible, which would make Stanley pretty disappointed in them if Stanley was alive and with a very good mind to be able to assess this and ask his opinion about it. So here's some things that I'm going to read from here. And listen, in fact, no one knows more than you. How much unbridled ego comes with this job. Now, here's how I define ego in this way, okay? So if somebody is for certain knowing they're right about something, now when there's people in opposition, it's not everybody's right, but eventually if you reach the higher worldview of ecocentrism and you're willing to be transparent in your debates about right and wrong, eventually you get to what is the higher right, and could be somebody was right in a particular interpretation of their actions, but if you apply a higher worldview that incorporates the entire biosphere, then you'll realize, okay, that's not right anymore, believing that lightning is explained this way so we can calm down our village until people forget about it, except they won't. Right? And they'll see lightning far away once in a while, even if nobody else gets hit with it during their lifetime, right? That they're going to believe they were right to create sheep in this way, like religions have, right? They believe they had good intentions. But again, here, how much unbridled ego comes with this job. So ego in this way, the way I want to interpret it, is having the strength to believe in yourself and what you stand for, and really put yourself out there. But you can't put yourself out there by refusing debate, by refusing transparency, by refusing accountability when you deserve the consequences. But again, the consequences are always lighter when the ego is not out of control, when the ego is meant to just be convicted in your beliefs. And now if I approach anybody in Ottawa, they would have an unhealthy ego in this sense, not in the way that I want to define it with this text, because they would not make any attempts to pay attention to what might be right or wrong. And that's where the danger is. To be who we are, to represent what we want to represent, you have to be arrogant enough to believe that you can do it. Now, this is Tony Stark, who is using that word because he's really connecting well with people here. Is they know he's arrogant, but they know he's explaining that arrogance kind of looks like arrogance sometimes, but it's not always arrogance. But it's a way to also show if you're confident enough that you're right, then it led to the explanation of your actions. But again, you have to always have that door open that you may be wrong, or that what was good for a while no longer applies to modernity or what we know of the greater world at the biosphere levels. For a long time now, we know things at the biosphere levels. We're not little foolish people living in a village who knows very little about the outside world. So when you have access to knowledge that exists, the natural world, spherical, living globe, and you don't incorporate that, then you are part of the problem. It's ego that got us here, and it's ego that allows us to stay. Yes, we took the damn infinity gems, and we did so because we thought they were safe with us. So again, religious leaders could say this, political leaders, millionaires who think they're working on a solution that's going to save humanity, except that what they're doing is largely more harming humanity. In part because they're not talking about the right things, such as HsD, right? So sometimes good intentions, if you cling to them too long when the evidence is there that you should have let go of your good intentions a long time, and even improve your intentions to fit reality and keep them good, then yes, you're part of the problem. It was arrogance and it was ego, and it was absolutely right for all this time. So though you may think it's your job to judge me and the others for what we did here, I think it's nothing compared to the things we've had to do to keep the world safe. Nothing. Now, if religious people say this, let's say they're ready for a change, but they're scared of the consequences, punishing so-and-so for the crimes that we know they've done against children, for example, and they are on the defensive in this way, they're stating we did what was right because you guys are sheep, which is pretty much what Loki says in the first Avengers movie, which it does fit your observable behaviors, because Loki only has one older man stand up. Everybody else is not standing up before the Avengers arrive. So again, the norm is that Loki was correct, that you, not only at this stage of your lives, are born in societies where you're meant to be ruled, but also you're training your kids like this. And that's not okay. And HSD will help you get out of this. So then you wouldn't be susceptible to characters, fictional characters like Loki. Okay, so I'll stop reading this now. And if anybody here has a problem with that, bring it on. And you know why you won't bring it on? Because I have a lot of things to talk about in relation to Marvel. And I'm never going to hear from you guys because you were not going to give me a voice by challenging me from reading this. That's why. All right, so folks, I promised to get back to the part of the question in French que la personne avait, puis je ne l'ai pas vite sur l'écran, puis je ne veux pas vous faire attendre, puis on est rendu à 1h15 dépassé. Je vous remercie beaucoup pour le temps aujourd'hui. Again, I'm reminding you that next week is part 2 of this, and I will prepare different things, and you can always send questions either live at the time, like I had one now, or put them on this one or another where I talk about the invitation to this as comments, and I will see it. One thing you guys don't realize is I get hardly any views, and I share and share and share this, and it's lost. And it's lost in part because I don't want to be part of the problem and allow ads. The other thing is people aren't ready for these conversations, and that includes the people you think are way ahead of me when they're not. So if I get a comment, believe me, I'm not overwhelmed with comments. I won't miss them. I will see them, and I will incorporate your questions if they come late for next time. So thank you very much for today. I'm going to end this stream, and I believe my computer then, oh yeah, I wanted to do this. I'll remove this. This will be how I end. My computer will save it so that the live will turn into a video that is always accessible. So thank you very much. Just a moment. Here's what I wrote. I had written a question myself, okay? And you could ask this to yourself. If my intentions are pure, then how do you explain yourselves? And the reason I asked this is that it was very important for me, if I was going to succeed in any way, even if it's a tiny, tiny way with my entire life of working on things, to be a helper, if I was going to succeed a tiny way, it would have to be that I'm congruent, that there is a lot of documentation that I'm not pursuing money. I'd love to have a girlfriend. I don't think it's possible with what I'm talking about and how I choose to live my life. So I have really nothing to gain. I really lived a life where I accept that in a society that rewards domesticates and not thinkers, and that includes, if somebody's famous, like, Jordan Peterson, in many ways, he is a domesticate. Because no way do you get famous or money in today's society in any country of the world without being a part of the problem of HSD. No way. I'm sorry, Jordan, or anybody else, but you don't get to be that famous unless a lot of what you say is what people want to hear, or you think should be hearing at certain levels, or are kind of ready to hear. There's still a lot of political correctness in Jordan Peterson, for example. And Jordan, I want to stop talking about you. I have to start studying somebody else and talk about somebody else. But you're always, if you ever hear of me, you're always welcome to contact me. It's not that hard so far. And it might always be like this because of what I talk about. So if you've seen, and really there's been years and years of me disconnecting from the monetary paradigm, from trying to make my life easier at the sake of falling back into HSD. Nope, my life has been hard and it's not going to get easier. Is then, if that's really my life, which is well documented, then what does that say about you? You have to ask yourself this. who are you really hurting? So when people hurt me, let's say it's somebody like it with the local school board here that I work for, and I just eventually my cup overfilled, and it's all well documented why. Is they believe, oh, this guy's different, so he's more culpable. Is it culpable? No, I don't think that's the right word I'm looking for. Uh, okay, I'll think about it some other time. So if I am uh, gullible. If they believe I'm gullible because I'm different, although I've proven I'm different in a way that doesn't make me gullible, then they'll do it anyways. So again, so when they're like this with me, are they really hurting me or they're hurting themselves? Well, they're hurting themselves and their kids' generations, but they're also hurting themselves that now they've had interactions with me. And instead of starting to want to collaborate to improve education as culture repairs that I could train, is they're going to get deeper into being part of the problem in a more transparent way, in a way that's become more and more public. So they're hurting themselves by trying to hurt me. And that's a little bit the reason why less and less people interact with me. They might not be able to put this into word, but they realize that it's not ego as much as it's critical thinking skills that connects me with reality, and also having trained in, with counseling skills and other types of skills that allows me to do very good psychological profiles of people. If people are scared that their true faces will be seen when they interact with me. So I'm given very few opportunities to be a helper in Canada, which again, I've realized this multiple years ago, which is why, again, I'm saying if there's anybody in any other countries that would like to offer me asylum or at least a permanent visa at some point to work on projects related to either education, mental health, or research in a way to develop policies for their social systems, I'm in. And it doesn't have to be full time, and you don't even have to pay me. I just pay my expenses and a little bit of spending money if I want to go play badminton or take a girl on a date that might be interested in me. That's pretty much it. I'm not asking for much other than continuing to be part of the solution on what I believe are the most crucial things to be working on. All right. Thanks, folks. Thanks for the people that participated with questions.